So that mouse has escaped. I hope the mouse escapes. Okay, we talked about this last time. We're talking about school violence. And some of the common characteristics of an individual that has killed people. One of the things that we, and this happens all the time. I think it happened over last week. Somebody shot somebody in Tulsa. Some school kid, and the individual died. But it was a kid in school. More than usual experience with firearms, showing a persistent fascination with guns. Guns are okay. You know, there's a lot of people that know a lot of things about guns, and they don't go around shooting everybody. They're very respectful of guns, but there are other individuals that are fascinated with weapons. I had a friend a colleague back at Ashford. He's in Missouri right now. He's up near St. Louis. But he had this fascination with military weapons. He knew more about them than I did, and he'd never been in the military. Because I had been in the military. He knew all the 7.62. He knew everything about them. We used to have arguments about guns from time to time, and he knew more about it than I did. He was almost always right, and I was almost always wrong. Anyway, so if they have a fascination with weapons, that's probably not a good thing for somebody that's a junior high student. Somebody that's an elementary student. These aren't the individuals that need to really think about guns to understand these things. Isolation, rejection, or torment by classmates, particularly difficult having a particularly difficult time relating to females. The whole male-female thing, it's natural for boys. There are boys and there are girls, and at some point, of course, they get together, and then that makes children. That's how children are made, boys and girls getting together. And this is a natural thing. This has been going on for eons. Humans, male humans, female humans get together. If you have a difficult time with the opposite sex, to the extent that you can interact with those select individuals, now we've got a recurring problem that is going to change your social understanding. If you think of your own histories, when you were in elementary school, you probably didn't really like the opposite sex. And then in adolescence, things started changing. And then now that you're adults, of course, you can interact with adults without crying or screaming or whatever. Of course, I'm talking about the males here, crying and screaming. With their interaction with the opposite sex. Okay. If we have a problem with this, they may blame the opposite sex. They may blame that person because they can't interact with it. And that's usually where we get rapes and murders. Males that murder females. The Ted Bundys of the world. What was his problem? What was Ted Bundy's problem? What was his problem, Tiffany? What was his problem? What would you say his problem was? You've read extensively about Ted Bundy. What was his problem? We blamed his murder spree, and his murder spree may have been hundreds of people. We don't know. But what was his problem?
Was it just women?
Yeah, he only murdered females. He didn't murder males that we know of. He usually didn't murder pre-adolescent females. I think he murdered a 12-year-old at one point. But she may have been, who knows what she looked like. What would you say his problem was, Ted Bundy?
I don't know. What I read was that most of the women that he murdered have a slight resemblance to the girl that broke his heart.
Exactly. He didn't murder her. It's the woman that he was madly in love with, potentially, I guess. But he blamed her for all of his problems in the future. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you look at all the pictures, they all look kind of alike. Well, all white chicks look alike, right?
But it was society that pulled them apart, not her.
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't have anything to do with that, but that's neither here nor there. The question is, what did Ted think about it? And the answer was he blamed women for his problems. or her for his problem. So anybody look like her, he killed her. En masse, sometimes in groups, but as strange as that is. Okay, so this can be a really serious problem. It's good, and of course, if you're a parent and you're looking at your teenage daughter or your teenage son, you want them to be normal, you want them to interact properly with their friends, with the opposite sex, certainly. But sometimes, of course, things don't quite work. They're not popular. One of the things that people want their children to be is popular. As interesting as that is, what does popularity have to do with anything? New hat. I know, I'm shocked. I was used to seeing the straw hat. Okay, so fascination with guns, problem with the opposite sex, preoccupation with various forms of graphically violent media, including music, internet sites, and video games. And of course, we talked about this, no Halo, Halo 3 is okay. Yeah, we can kill zombies, that's all right, but any of those games where you're having sex with prostitutes and
I haven't played that one.
busting a cap in somebody's ass or whatever. Whatever, I don't know. I don't know what the video games are doing these days. My son had a copy of the first really violent game where if you, I don't know, you shot somebody and their blood spurted all over the place or their head fell off or something. And he was saying, look at this is funny. It's kind of, no it's not. Decapitating people is not humorous, okay? But at least keep one. Possible school reforms, we talked about this last time. Requiring school uniforms, of course, is one way to do it. Beef up security measures, and of course that's what they've done here on this campus. There was a attempted raid last year of somebody on their way to the dorms. Right on the other side of the library, somebody was assaulted, and she fought him off. But since then, of course, we beefed up security on campus. Passing tougher gun laws. Of course, that's not happening. It seems like the Second Amendment people seem to have control over what's going on, the gun rights people. So we're not really passing tougher gun laws, are we? We don't seem to be able to do that. The more conservative the state, the less likely you are to get these laws passed. You cannot have a gun within 1,000, well, it all depends on the state. They charged that guy that discharged the weapon in Charlottesville. They charged him with discharging a firearm within 1,000 feet of a school. That's what they charged him with. Not firing, not attempted murder. They didn't charge him with that. They charged him with discharging a firearm within 1,000 feet of the school. Offering violence prevention programs, restricting access to violent movies. I'm not sure how you do that. PG-13, I guess. I don't know. Of course, I can watch anything I want on television, right? I have HBO and Starz. Most violent movie I've seen lately was Guardians of the Galaxy. They just blasted each other all to pieces. Kind of fun. Kind of fun. I like to see raccoons killing people. It drives me nuts. Profiling, yeah. Profiling. Yeah. And trees. Sticking their fingers up people's noses. Trees. Profiling to predict which students are likely to commit violent crimes. And this can be a problem because which students are we going to identify? How are we going to identify these individuals? Do we give them a psychological evaluation? Is that how we do it? How do the police do it? How do they profile people? How did they do it in New York City?
Don't they just look up their interactions with people and how they, and then...
I'm sorry?
Do observation?
Sometimes they were just stopping people because of the way they looked.
Oh.
You look like a hood to me, so I'm going to stop you. Despite the fact that you're African American. Wait a minute. Maybe that's why I think you're a hood, because you're African American. You're Hispanic and you've shaved your head. Obviously, you're a bad guy. Only bad guys shave their heads. Look at all the tattoos you have on your arm. obviously you're a bad guy. So we profile, and sometimes, of course, we're targeting the wrong people. Certainly, very often, we're targeting the wrong people. Increasing communication between students and the school administrators, that's another way to stop school violence. Okay. Profiling, probably not the best idea in the world. However, we do need to profile people if we have a psychological evaluation. If we have interacted with those select individuals and we see violent tendencies, that is a person we need to profile. Not just because they're African American, not just because they're Native, not just because they're Hispanic, not just because they're white people. Probably the most dangerous people in the United States are white. Serial killers, they're almost all white. Mass murderers, they're almost all white. What race was the guy that shot up the theater up in Aurora?
White.
He was white. How about the guy that shot Gabby Giffords and killed, what, 6 people down in Tucson? Let's see, what race was he?
White.
Again, white? Okay. Can we think of any serial or mass murderers that were African American?
Probably the 2 that went out on that freeway shooting.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, the 2 up in Washington, D.C. Yeah. They were certainly African American. There's one. We got one. Okay. How about natives that are mass murderers or serial killers? Any? Any? Oh, come on. How about Hispanics? Come on, how about Hispanics? Any mass murderers or serial killers among the Hispanic population? Can anybody think of one? No? Oh, man. That makes me the most dangerous guy in the room. Don't you forget it, right? The most prevalent problem with aggression in education settings is bullying. Of course, that's in high school and grade school and junior high school. On college campuses, it's date rape. It also has to do with joining a fraternity, hazing, or joining a football team, or joining a basketball team. Hazing is also a serious problem. We just had a kid drink himself to death at the University of Maryland. We read it over the weekend. Yeah, he drank himself to death. Or did somebody say, hey, here, drink this, here, chug-a-lug this bottle of tequila, and he just got too much alcohol in his system and then he died. I went to Wabash College. They had an individual that's what happened to him. Drank himself to death because they were phasing. They were hazing him. Not phasing, they were hazing him. And he drank himself to death. And the administration was so appalled by it that they closed down the fraternity, forced those kids to go someplace else to live. Hazing. Serious problem. So date rape on college campuses, it's hazing and it's date rape that are the most dangerous problems. Something that you need to think about. So if you're wandering around at night or you're at some kind of a convocation and it's over with, you need to think about protecting the people around you. If you're male, then you need to think about walking with somebody who's female, because there's always a possibility. This is an open campus, so anybody can come on campus. It's probably not going to be somebody from this campus, it's going to be somebody off campus. I've apologized to Stephanie. We were at I can't even remember what it was, something Sarah was putting on at night, and you needed to walk back to your car. And I don't remember if you asked me or not.
Yeah, I did.
You did, and I said no.
Like a jerk.
I know, just like a jerk. But you walk back with, well, you got one of the security guys to walk back. I don't know what the hell's wrong with me sometimes. I figured you could probably beat the guy up.
Oh, I'm probably
I know, you could
I mean, it's for the other guy's safety,
Yeah,
not for mine.
exactly. So, and that was wrong. That was, I should have escorted you back here. I don't know what the hell I was thinking. But I'm a villain. Obviously, I'm a villain. So I apologize once again. In front of all these people, I apologize to
And
you.
you too.
Okay. Kick somebody out. Here. Take all our stuff. If we need another chair, down there. We're gonna put them right beside you. Much of this aggression is unreported and hits underestimated by official records. We know how many rapes there are on every campus. That we had the one last year that I'm aware of. There was another one. There was another one. Last year, the first semester, there was a rape on campus. Sexual assault on campus. Anyway, so we know of the ones that we hear about, but of course they're not always reported. People are embarrassed. They don't want to talk about it. So school violence on college campuses, it mostly has to do with drinking, being stupid, drinking, and date rape. Most of those who make implied or direct threats will not commit serious violence. The reality is that even if it's 1%, that 1% is really serious. Even if 99 out of 100 times nothing takes place, we still need to be aware that if somebody threatens somebody else, that there is a potentiality. Thank you. There is a potentiality for violence. Thank you, sir. Potentiality for violence. Even if it's just the one time. If you're talking about suicide and nobody commits suicide, 99 people talk about it, that it's the 100th time, and that is the biggest tragedy, is that you didn't pay enough attention. Because 99 times, they didn't do anything anyway. So you need, everything is serious. Anything is potentially serious. We had a case that, I told you about the situation at Ashford. We had the one kid that committed suicide my second year when at Ashford. And after that, we took every ideation, every murmuring of suicide, we took them all seriously. Because we didn't want it to ever happen again. It just takes one time. How many times did we stop people from committing suicide? Who knows? You know, it's the same way with violence. How many times did we stop people from being violent? It just takes the one time, the one murder, the one time that it becomes violent. Threatening communications are made for many different reasons. For example, angry disputes, fear, jealousy, and ideology. We had a case at Ashford where they were closing down the school and everybody was pissed. I mean, everybody was really upset. Pissed means drunk in England, but I'm an American, so when I say pissed, I mean angry. Everybody was pretty upset. I was upset. I mean, they were closing the school. I moved there. I had bought a new house. You know, I was pretty upset. Somebody threatened the administration on Facebook. They sent them a tweet. They sent them a threatening tweet. And they didn't sign it, of course. Nobody's that stupid. But, of course, after that, they had to, security had to escort the administration on and off campus. They had guards outside their offices just in case something would happen. So you have to take all of this stuff seriously because something negative may happen. I told you about the case of the kid walking toward campus with a weapon under his coat in the rain. You know, who knows what that could have been. Should I have ignored it? Did I need to make sure that nothing negative happened? I told you what I was going to do. I was going to run into him with my Miata. I would have hit him right about calf high or something. Yeah, I would have hit him right in the middle of his calf. Probably would have broken my car and I wouldn't have hurt him. I don't know. Anyway. But everything turned out okay. He didn't have a weapon. Another time on campus, it was the end of right after a basketball game. I went to the basketball game. I think we won, which is kind of exciting every time you win. I always sat with the nuns. I know that sounds kind of odd. I'm not a religious person. I always sat with the nuns because they were such a hoot. You know, these nuns. I mean, they wouldn't cheer, they wouldn't make any noise, but sometimes they'd clap. You know, they were really funny. And they would ask me questions like, what's a 2-1-2 defense? You know, that kind of thing. It was really kind of weird. So I just thought the nuns were really funny. So I used to sit behind them, and I don't know, they were protecting me more than I was protecting them, certainly. So I was walking out of the gymnasium after the basketball game, and for some reason, some way, I got in front, and I was kind of leading everybody out of the basketball game. And there were two parking lots. There was one here, and there was one behind a building. And I was parked behind the building, and most people were going up this way. Well, I was walking down there. It's kind of dark down there. There was one light over here. I saw somebody coming out of the shadows, and he had a Mach 9. You know what a Mach 9 is? It's a weapon. It's an automatic, yeah, it's an automatic pistol is what it is. Anyway, he had a Mach 9. And so I'm thinking, idiot me, what am I thinking? I'm thinking, I got to protect the nuns. For some reason, I had, you know, all of them are in their 70s and 80s. They're older than dirt. But here I was thinking, I've got to protect the nuns. I've got to protect the nuns. This guy's carrying a weapon. He had a weapon. So my brain's spinning, and I'm trying to figure out, well, what the hell am I going to do? And I need to warn these people. So what I need him to fire so that it warns the people behind me. And so how do I get him to fire? Well, he needs to shoot at me, of course, because I'm going out in front. This is so dumb. I know. So my plan was, of course, he was right-handed. He had the weapon like this. My plan was to move to his right so that he'd either have to swing his body, and he wouldn't be able to hit me, or he'd have to fire with one hand. I don't know if you've ever fired an automatic weapon with one hand, but you can't really keep it on target. That was my hope, okay? So my plan was to duck behind a car. I was going to yell at him and then duck behind the car to his right, to my left. Okay, and then I was going to circle around behind him and jump him from behind. That was my idea. Okay. So he's got this Mach 9. All right. I needed to save the nuns, right? I needed to save the nuns. I was going to be, well, I was going to be dead probably, because his first shot is going to be on target, unless I can move fast enough so that he has to swing his body. That was the idea. I was going to sprint, and I was going to, so I was walking toward him. I needed to make sure that he made eye contact with me. I needed to be close enough to him, right? Obviously, I'm not dead, so evidently he missed me, right? As it turned out, he was playing some kind of a Nerf game, and it was a Nerf weapon, but he had painted this Nerf gun in olive drab and gray, so it looked like a real weapon. It really looked like a real weapon. It looked like a Mach 9. I had already identified